Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about the law of work. Everything I'm going to share with you tonight comes from the Spirit's book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. I can't take any credit for it. I simply read and put it on paper, if you will.
Work.
What's that?
Work.
I worked. That's right. And the title, The Great Resignation, just because it's timely, right? There's a lot of discussion about this period of time, right? People leaving jobs, quitting, moving on to other things. And some people say they're doing it by choice. They don't have it. There's a whole discussion around this. And I'm not here to talk about the politics or share my opinion, but I think it's timely for a talk on the law of work, right? Because what we'll find in this talk is work is not about money, right? It's not about earning your keep necessarily financially, although we do derive income from work. We have to pay bills. But work can take many different forms, and it's about being useful and productive. So that's what we'll talk about tonight, all right? First, some definitions, right? This is dictionary.com. Resignation, right? It's the act of resigning or quitting, right? The other definition, submissive, unresisting attitude, a passive acquiescence. To resign from something, to resign from the debate, to quit, right? It's all these synonyms. Work, obviously, right? You don't see any mention in this definition about money, right? It's exertion or effort directed to produce or accomplish something, to labor, to toil. Well, you can labor in your yard, right? You can labor in your living room. You can labor in the movie, doing all kinds of things. So you're putting your mind to work, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to work for money. But you have to work, and we'll discover this shortly here. Kardec asked in question 674, is work a requirement of the law of nature? Do we have to produce? Do we have to go do something? Or can we just sit on the couch and eat chips and watch TV all day, right? And make that our life, right? What did we hear? What was the answer we were given? Well, what the spirits explained to Kardec was that work is indeed a law of nature, right? Everything that we enjoy, everything that we utilize, everything that we go through is a product, right? And this could be for our subsistence, this could be for our pleasure, for our joy. It's all a product of what we produce, right? So there's no way to experience life without producing, right? And we are a product of what we produce, and we'll talk more about that. But the short answer here is yes, work is absolutely a law of nature. Kardec then asked in 675, should we understand that work only applies to material occupations? In other words, digging ditches, building a wall, loading trucks, working your profession, material things. And I think we already answered that, right? It's pretty obvious that work is definitely not about manual or material things. And he points out here that it's not just the body that works, but the spirit as well. And in every sort of useful occupation is work, not just the material type, where you're physically involved. Make sense? Awesome. I'm not used to everybody sitting up front like this. It's pretty cool. I can remember sitting in the back and Livia encouraged. Oh, you can't hear me?
Yes, we can.
Is that better? Should I shout? No, I'm kidding. All right. Question 676, he asks, well, okay, why do we have to work? Right? And again, I think this has been answered, right? But what did they tell Kardec, right? He says, because of your physical nature and because through work you develop, right? As humans, right? Let's compare that to the infant, right? The baby, right? Is totally supportive, needs other people, right? Parents, in most cases, right? Then it becomes a toddler, an adolescent, and an adult. And what they tell us here in this answer is if we didn't work, if we didn't produce, we would remain in the state of a child, right? By working, by being productive, we increase our intellectual ability, we increase our moral character in a lot of ways, right? Because we're in situations where we have to make choices, good, bad, right, wrong, and it's all through this effort, or this what they call labor and activity, that we ensure our progression. Easy enough? Awesome. In 678, Kardec asks, he goes further, he says, are the inhabitants of realms more evolved than Earth, subject to the same need for work? So when I read that, it's like, man, am I going to have to do this every lifetime? Can't I get a break, right? That's not what he meant, but the question is legitimate, right? On Earth, we have certain needs, we have certain obligations, right? We're here for a reason. As we evolve, right, as we become less tied to material, right, there will be less need for what we call work, right? But he emphasizes, the Spirit's emphasize here is that the nature of work, wherever you happen to be, is always relative to the evolvement of the Spirit. So as we evolve individually, and our spirit is not on earth anymore, right, has become less tied to matter, work will take on a different look, a different feel. But don't ever think that these more evolved spirits don't work, right? They're always working.
For things to happen, if you don't work, somebody has to work for you. So
Right, exactly.
Even on the spiritual world, it's like the image of you sitting down in the lake, somebody playing music and angels giving you grapes. The angels are working. If the angels are working, why not you?
Right, exactly. I like it. So let's move on. Question 679, Kardec asked, are the rich exempt from the law of work? That's a good question, right? We often think of wealth and riches of people sitting in their mansion counting their money, right? And they've earned it, right? That's one rationale, right? They don't need to work. They don't have to lift the tool or move the truck or whatever. Why can't they do nothing? They built their business. Well, the answer is a little bit more involved, right? And the spirits acknowledge, right? They acknowledge the fact that, hey, you're right. That's a good question. If they have enough resources and the resources generate income, they don't necessarily have to be doing the material work. But what do they tell us here? It frees them from the obligation of material work, perhaps, but not from the obligation of being useful, right? And with these resources, what's the line with great responsibility come with great.
Great power comes great
Thank
responsibility.
See, you guys are good. You should be up here, right? But right, so with this acquiring of wealth or business acumen or things, right? It doesn't create the freedom necessarily to do nothing. It almost creates more responsibility. What do you do with those resources, right? Are you putting that money to work in good endeavors, bad endeavors, right? Is it being useful? So their point here is that all of us have to be useful according to our abilities, and just having money or like the not having the need for material things because it all has been provided by some means, right? It doesn't excuse you from the obligation of being useful to yourself, to the world, to your fellow man. So no free passes. And then here's the opposite end of the spectrum, right? You go from Kardec talking about people that just don't need money, can they get a free pass, to question 680, right? Well, hey, some spirits, or some people rather, are incapable of work, right? They have a handicap, they can't walk, they can't use their hands, they can't speak, they have brain damage, any number of things, right, that limits their ability. And he asked the question, these people, right, they're entirely useless. So what's their excuse, or what's their definition? What's their meaning? And I love this answer, right? And it makes sense. That's a beautiful thing about Spiritism, in my opinion. It's always rational, right? It's always easily understood, in my opinion. But the spirits tell Kardec in the answer to 680 that God only disapproves of individuals that choose not to work, right? They choose to be voluntarily useless. But the person that's incapacitated due to illness or congenital issues, or some injury that's sustained later in life, right? They're not choosing to be useless. And rest assured, those individuals are working, right? There's a great story, and I could not tell you the book it came from, but it talks about different lifetimes of reincarnations of a man that several lifetimes ago was a thief, a thug. He killed people with knives, right? And then couple lifetimes later, right, he was a soldier, so he killed people with a sword, right, he fighting, right, a little bit more honorable perhaps, but still using his hands to kill. Another lifetime he is a surgeon, right, curing things. In another lifetime he had no use of his hands, so he had to experience both sides of this. So the point is, in this lifetime, should we be born incapable of producing or working for whatever reason, or we become incapacitated in some way, rest assured we're still working, right? Imagine having your freedom. Imagine having the ability to work and walk and talk, and all of a sudden you're stricken with some life-threatening disease that just incapacitates you. Your mind is probably still working. You've got to work through those emotions, that anger, right? So you are working. You're just not producing in material ways. Does that make sense?
Look at Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, absolutely. He was useful, right? Continued to produce and educate, found ways. Absolutely, that's a great example of what we're trying to say here. 681. Does the law of nature require that children care for their parents? And this, I think, is a no-brainer, right? I think we all would say absolutely, right? Certainly it does, right? Just like parents are supposed to take care of their kids. Does that always happen? No. Do we always take care of our parents? No. There's different circumstances. But what they're telling us here is it is our duty, right? And we should be paying more attention to that. We should be trying harder. Just like parents should take care of their kids, kids should take care of their parents. It goes even one further, right? It says, look, and if for some reason the family doesn't step up, then the community, society needs to step. And I think years ago, centuries ago, I think the church played a huge role, right, in caring for people that couldn't care for themselves. And today, we probably see the same, except it comes in the form of more nonprofits. Church is still helping, but church seems to have less of a central role in the lives, I think, of people compared to centuries ago. But you see lots of nonprofits. We have several involved here. They feed the poor, they send supplies to Haiti or the Dominican Republic. So we do see people helping in that way. But ultimately, we do have the responsibility to care for our parents, and society needs to step up when it can't always be done. It's not just the right thing, it's a natural law. All right, so just as much as we're supposed to be productive and produce, Kardec asks, well, is there a limit to work, right? What's the question? Since rest is always required after work, is it also a law of nature, right? Are you allowed to stop? Are you allowed to take a break? And obviously, I think we all agree, right? Absolutely, right? You've got to restore your strength in order to work, in order to produce. So there's absolutely necessity in this. If you don't take a break, and I can think of instances in my career or my life where I burn the candle at both ends, you know? How often can you do that until your quality of work goes down, until your health suffers? I can remember at the peak of one of my early businesses, early practices, everything was going great, you know? I had, everything was falling into place. But I was, 260 pounds. I was eating terribly. I wasn't sleeping. I was stressed out all the time. But, the ledger looked good. The bottom line looked good. But I never forget one night having pain, having a flushed face, and thinking, oh man, this is it, I'm going to die, right? Luckily, it was just a reaction to some supplement I took, but it helps you reassess, right? So the point of this is absolutely work too, as much as you're capable of. Don't be lazy, don't hold back, but also have balance, pay attention. Right, you have to rest. You have to take a break. You're useless to the ones that care about you, to yourself, if you drop dead from all the stress and not taking care of yourself. So it's okay to rest. All right. All right. So what is the limit then? All right. Right, to the limit of your strength, like we stated, right? But God gives you the liberty to decide on this point individually. Use it wisely, right? Balance. Question 684, Kardec asks, well, what should we think about people who misuse their authority, right? Overworking those under them. And we talked about that a little bit, right? With folks that had lots of resources. So imagine you're the boss and you manage 20 people, right? And you get paid based on how little you have to pay them. right? And you just work them, and you set thresholds for bonuses that they'll never reach, right? All so that you can keep more money in your pocket. So a lot of work gets done. The company supplies whatever they supply. The boss, the owner, keeps a lot of money, and the employee doesn't get much. Well, there's a lot of production going on there, right? But it's not the intention. That's not the goal. We're not supposed to advance on the suffering of others. So if we're responsible for others, right, in that situation as a manager, an owner, or even think of it in a family situation or a relationship, right? If we're always improving our situation by taking advantage of others or at the expense of other people, then we're doing something wrong, okay? That's very important. And that's what was in the book. Sorry, I ad-libbed there just a little bit. So question 685 talks about the end of this, right? We're born, we grow up, we do our job, we have our career, and then at some point, 65 is common in this country. We quit, we retire. Can we do that? Are we allowed to do that, right? Because we're supposed to work, right? So Kardec asks a legitimate question, right? And here's the answer, right? You're only obliged to work according to your strength. Right? Now that doesn't mean you can pick a number, you can do that and retire from your career. Nothing says, even if you have the ability, the strength to keep going. When I turn 65, I don't know if I'm going to want to quit, right? It's a long time. It's like 30 years from now. No, I'm just kidding. It's like 10 years from now. But the point is, I may not want to quit, and if I have the strength, I might keep doing it. But maybe I still have the strength, but I don't want to keep doing what I'm doing. So I can quit. All right, I still have to be productive. As long as we have strength and we have the ability to contribute, to produce, you don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over. But you should continue to be useful. So I can envision a time for me where I might stop seeing patients, right? But I still have knowledge, I still have experience, or maybe I teach, right? Maybe I will volunteer. I can see myself going on mission trips. Around the world, perhaps, so I'll travel a little bit, but I'll keep producing, I'll keep helping others. And we can all think of examples like that. But as long as we're capable, we should work. I have a relative that had a very good job, a very good retirement, and was able to retire at the age of 49, right? That's like everybody's dream, right? Retire young, not have any need for money, right? That's like the American dream, I guess. But that gentleman is now almost 80 years old, right? And since he was 49, he's watched a ton of TV, watched a lot of movies, he's eaten a lot of stuff, and he's not taking care of himself, right? And that's his choice, right? But the point is, in that pursuit of that dream of being able to do whatever you want, it's easy to lose track of the fact that we still have to work to the ability of our strength. He didn't have to keep working. He could have quit his job, right? But let's be useful. Let's be productive. Let's use those skills to help others.
That takes to another question.
What's that?
If you don't do good, but you don't do bad, is it okay?
I think if you don't do the best that you can, it's probably
Yeah,
bad.
you have to do something.
Yes.
If you don't do anything, you're still not doing good. You're still not up. So unproductive goes.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't have to be for money. It doesn't have to be for monetary gain.
The work that is on this books are the meanings are way bigger than just work for a company and make money out of that.
Absolutely. And in this situation, they also talk about when there's the opposite, right? People get older, they lose their ability to work as hard, and they don't have the means to retire. So this also reminds us, the answer in this question also reminds us about charity and love of society, where we should be helping people less fortunate in this situation. They're older, they can't produce, even if they're younger and they can't produce because of some ailment. Again, they reiterate what it says here, that society should take its place, right? Where folks can't support themselves later in life and their family can't step up and be there, that society should take over. So again, they should be able to rest if they can't do it. All right, what do we got? 2 more hours, Tim? And a half? Okay. So Matthew 7 through 11 says this, right? If you help yourself, then heaven will come to your aid. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. For everyone who asks receives. Knock and the door will be opened. And in the gospel, according to Spiritism, they paraphrase that or interpret this as the basis for the law of work, okay? Which makes sense, right? And we're reminded in this passage, or in their explanation of this, is seeking and you shall find. Now, just because you're looking for whatever it is, right? Let's call it work in this case. You may not find what you want, right? Or what you desire or what you dream of. But if you seek and you try hard enough, you're going to get what you need, right? Isn't there a song, right? You get what you need sometimes. The point is, always keep seeking, always keep trying. Don't give up. As long as you're searching, as long as you're looking, you're going to find what you need. It may take time, it may take effort, there may be a lot of pain involved, but don't give up, right? They go on to repeat, right, what's in Matthew, right? That God helps those who help themselves, right? They remind us that God gave us drive to better ourselves. What do we know about this life that we're given right now? It's one. And who knows, hundreds, thousands, I don't know, right? But it's one. And, we're born the first time, simple and lacking knowledge, and life after life after life, we, over time, become a pure spirit. That's our destiny, right? Everything that happens in between happens at our own pace, by our own design. We can limit or exaggerate suffering and pain based on the choices that we make, or, to your point, the choices we don't make, right? To not make a decision is still a decision, right? So they remind us here that God just didn't let us reincarnate without drive, right? Our goal, right? Our drive is to improve, and we're going to improve. That can be fast, it can be slow, right? But rest assured, we are all going to evolve, all right? And they give the example here, right, about separating us from other animals, right? We have the ability to think, to rationalize, to make choices. We have a conscience, right? So we definitely have this ability. With every day that we engage with other people, that we apply ourselves to learn and to study, we progress intellectually, right? And that intellect does not go away, right? When we pass and at some point reincarnate, that intellect is with our spirit. That's not something that disappears. The money in my wallet, the shirt on my back, the car that I drive, that doesn't stay with me, right? But my intellect, your moral character, everything that you've developed in that regard, doesn't just you don't go back to here, right? If I pass away today and I'm here, when I come back, I'm here. And I keep working with a drive to progress. Over these lifetimes, these moral qualities become more refined, right? I become less tied to matter, right? we become less tied to what pleases our senses, our ears, our eyes, our touch, right? And we become more attracted, more attached to love and charity, right? So as we make this progression, we improve and we progress. And all of that, right, is because of the effort and the work that we do. Make sense? Sounds so easy, right? Right? All right. So we're wrapping this up pretty soon here. What the gospel teaches us, right, is my progress, your progress. It's unlimited, right? It's uncapped, right? We can make. We're not going to go from here to here in one lifetime, but the ability, right, in this one life is unlimited. I can totally decide. You can totally decide how much you want to progress. I don't want you to say it out loud, but just think of a bad habit you might have, right? Don't spend a whole lot of time about it, right? Just one. Right? Listen, just one, all right? And think about this, right? How I'm going to just speak for me, right? I used to smoke. I used to chew tobacco, right? And I'm not talking just as a kid, right? I'm talking about into is this being recorded? I'm just kidding. into my 50s, okay? I'm 55, right? And you wouldn't have known it, right? I didn't smoke I haven't smoked for many, many years. But there's this tobacco that you can put right? You don't. It's so sophisticated. You don't even have to swallow or spit. It just gets absorbed. So nobody in the world knows you're addicted to nicotine. You could do your job. You can come to the center. You can, well, don't kiss your wife because she might taste it, and then you get in trouble because you told her you quit already, right? The point is, how many years did I consciously make that wrong decision, even though intellectually I knew it was wrong, even though morally I knew it was an addiction that wasn't healthy for me, right? And I lied about it, I hid it, right? Right? How many years did I make that decision, right? So the point is that choice on a daily basis definitely hindered my progress, right? Think about all the wrongs. Some people would say, oh, it's just a little tobacco, it's nicotine, who cares? But all of the facets of that addiction, right? The health, the mental, the lies, the hiding, the cheating, right? How many, if you think about it, I help people hear better, right? For a living, right? That's what I do. I'm an audiologist. And I'll talk to people about hearing loss from their job or their recreation, right? Like a band or a sheet metal worker or a mechanic. And we talk about noise exposure. Like every day, just think about one little cut with a razor. Just a little nick with a razor. It doesn't hurt too much. It doesn't make a big deal. But if you did that every day for your whole career, you wouldn't have an arm, right? Same thing happens with noise. That's how it destroys your hearing later in life. Well, in my example with the tobacco, every day that little razor, how much effort, how much did that keep me from following the right path? So I'm not condemning you if you smoke. I don't want you to take it that way. But I'm just using that as an example of how a choice that we know is bad for us, it's not healthy, and we hide it, how it impacts our ability to progress, which is unlimited except by us. God doesn't limit it. We limit it by the choices that we make. Does that make sense? Is it too harsh, or does it seem okay? Fair? Fair. That's a good word. I like fair. All right. So I'll stop beating that horse. But essentially, they remind us in the gospel on this chapter that we're absolutely the product of our own efforts, right? I am today the sum, right, of all my previous decisions. Not just yesterday and 10 years ago and when I was a kid, but 100 lifetimes ago, right? I'm living the reality that I've created over many, many lifetimes. And every moment, every day, I have the ability to choose good, bad, no choice, right? And my choices, your choices, dictate what happens next. So the downside to knowing this, right, and to studying Spiritism and coming to a place like this is now when I mess up, I'm not ignorant to it. Now I know I'm messing up and it hurts and you feel guilt at times. Luckily, I don't mess up as much as I used to, right? So it's helping me be better. But we learn, we study, and now we know these things. And it's really a challenge at times because you're torn. At least I am, right? Out of this effort, right, of ours, they reiterate in the gospel in this chapter that work is absolutely necessary, all right? You can't go live on an island and not interact with people because you don't like people, even if you have the money to do it, right? I'm not going to grow or evolve without interacting with you. You're not going to grow or evolve without interacting with the people around you. It takes a village, as they say, right? We're all here to help each other. And some of those most difficult people in your life, think about a family member that you love them, but you don't like them. Anybody else have a relative like that? I got one, but I won't bore you with my story. The point is that person in your life, right? It's probably somebody you owe a debt to, right? You haven't worked out whatever it is, right? They could have been someone that hurt you in the past or you hurt them. Who knows, right? There's a story. Luckily, God, by the grace of God, we're born with no memory of all the crap all the bad stuff we did in previous lives. Luckily, could you imagine knowing everything you did for hundreds of lives? Oh my God, it'd be terrible, right? So fortunately, we have no memory of that. But before we came back, what did? We decided, right? When we asked God, hey, look, here's where I messed up. This is what I want to fix. And I owe this person and this person. I got to learn this and I got to learn not to do that. And we put ourselves, right, in a situation where we are embedded in a family dynamic, a relationship type dynamic, where predetermined a few things, socioeconomic, health, certain relationships, all for the purpose of overcoming those difficult situations. And some days I'm really good with those things, and other days I'm really bad. So it's all part of the process. But the point is, work is necessary. We've got to work through those issues. They remind us again, seek and you will find. You won't always get what you want, but you will find the solution to your problems. You're going to work and produce, and ultimately they tell us in the gospel that our reward will correspond to our accomplishments. The better I live today, the better life is tomorrow, from a moral standpoint, right? I make better choices today, my reality is better tomorrow. Easy enough, but yet so hard, right? All right. So wrapping up, right? I get this question. I'm so glad this was in the chapter, because when I talk to people about my beliefs, I was just talking to a guy who felt it was important to tell me that he's an atheist, and he had this whole genius. This guy's a genius, and he could give you the whole reason why, and it would make sense intellectually, perhaps, right? But in my conversations, right, with him, right, and others over the years, one of the things I get in response to this argument or this discussion is, okay, if you're surrounded by spirits and they can influence you, they can help you, how come they don't give you the lottery numbers? How come they don't give you the invention to cure cancer, right? Or how come you can't wave your hand and fix hearing loss, right? Well, that's not how it works, right? Yes, we're surrounded by spirits, and yes, they talk to us, right? And yes, they influence us. But guess what? We got to open the connection. We have to seek, right, and find. We have to knock so the door opens. We have to try to connect, right? And when they talk, we have to listen, right? So that's the point. They don't help us with shortcuts. They don't give us the lottery numbers. They don't give us new inventions just to give them to us. But if we connect and we ask, that intuition, that feeling you get, right? That, oh, I better go this way, right? There's a good chance that's a guardian, right? That's a mentor. But we have to be in a place where we can receive their message and follow them. There's a great story in one of Valdo's books about a little woman, right? That's walking down a really dark street at night. Terrible neighborhood, but she works here and she's got to go through this street to go home. Someone got hurt. They got killed, right? But it wasn't her, right? And these guys, they got arrested. They talk about, well, how come you didn't get her? Oh no, she had these two huge guys next to her. There was no way we were going to mess with her. But she was all alone. And the woman tells the story, or the story in the book talks about, all she was doing the whole time was praying. She was walking down the street praying, God, please protect me, please protect me, please protect me. And she was protected, right? Just things like you can't prove it with science, you can't see it, but there's a great example of asking and you'll receive. In other words, spirits give us strength if we decide to listen and connect. Morally, right? Remember, we get up each morning, we live our life, we grow intellectually, and our choices help us grow morally, right? The whole idea here is that this connection to spirits, this remembering that production in work is the law, it's required. It's not just, like we said, monetarily or what have you. It's to help us grow morally. And through effort, through work, through helping others, this is how we grow. And they tell us that as long as we are trying and we're asking, that we will receive it. It won't always come in the way we want to see it, but it will come, and it'll be helpful. All right, and finally, they say, look, you've got to ask with some parameters, right? I tell the story about my daughters, what they want for Christmas sometimes, what they pray for, and they're older now, so it's less relevant, but I want a bicycle, or I want candy, or whatever. Remember, it doesn't work that way, right? We need things, we want things, but what we really are given, right, are the things that we need, right? They're always going to come if we're sincere in our effort, right? We have to be sincere with our ask. We have to be sincere with our effort of working towards whatever we're striving for. And sometimes that sincerity has to come through, like I can't even think of a good example, but let's say you want the promotion, right, at work, right? And if you pray for the promotion, that's probably not sincere in the sense it's material, right? But if you pray for the ability to do a good job, for the courage to live up to the challenges, to face the obstacles, right? Give me strength, Father. Give me courage. And you apply yourself, then that sincerity carries over. Not actually praying for just the promotion. We have to have faith, they tell us. You have to ask with faith. Faith in God, faith in your mentors. And with that faith comes the willingness and the ability to not only ask, but to open and receive. And be confident. Really believe in these things, you know. Sometimes you're like, well, I hope this happens, right? And you cross your fingers. Well, that's not confidence, right? When you're really working towards something and you're praying and you're working hard and you have a goal, believe in the outcome. Just what you said this morning, or early in the talk, right? You know, we believe in this thing that we can't see, but yet we look in the mirror and we don't believe in that person. Believe in yourself. You're amazing, right? You're born for perfection. You can do anything, right? We did this example with my kids at one point. It's called mirror work, and I forget the lady's name that taught this. But anyways, long story short, stand in front of your mirror, hold a mirror, and just look at you, right? And say, I love you. You're amazing. You're so strong. You're so smart. Try to do that without hesitation and without emotion. And we did this with my kids at one point, and it was hard. It is really hard, but start your day off. Try starting your day off every morning with some type of gratitude. You taught me this years ago. I still do it to this day. My eyes open. I'm pretty quick to move. Right, my feet hit the floor. Thank you, God, for Christianity. Thank you, God, for the growth. Thank you, God, for my job. Yeah.
Immediately, yeah.
Yeah, and just start it off with gratitude. And then the days I skip that, those days are harder than the days I do it. So just try to start your day with some gratitude and build that confidence. Fervor, they tell us you have to have fervor. Ask with fervor. And importantly, be humble when asking, right? Don't assume or be cocky, right? Or do it out loud and for show, right? Avoid the arrogance as well. Be humble and avoid arrogance. And if we can do these things more consistently, our lot in life, I think, gets easier. Not easier, but progressively better. And the more we can make these choices and build our moral character, the less suffering we endure. So thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate that, and we'll see you next time.